You've seen them before, missing persons posters taped to lampposts, flashing briefly on the news before fading into obscurity. People vanish every day, slipping through the cracks of society. Some are taken. Some run away. Some are never found. But what if there was something else? What if there was a place, a hidden place, that took people? And what if I told you I found it? This is my story. It started on my way home from work. I take the same train every evening, a dull, rattling subway line that snakes through the city. Packed with exhausted commuters staring dead-eyed at their phones. It's a routine I don't think twice about, until the night I noticed something strange. The man in the gray hoodie. I first spotted him standing near the train doors, head lowered, hood drawn over his face. Nothing unusual at first, just another anonymous commuter. But as the train jerked forward, I realized something. He wasn't moving. Not in the way a person should when a train shifts. Everyone else swayed slightly with the motion, adjusting their stance. But he remained unnaturally still. As if he were rooted to the floor. I glanced at him again. That was my first mistake. His head snapped up, and for the briefest moment, I saw his face. Or rather, I saw the absence of one. A blur. A smear, like a photo taken with a shaking hand. No eyes, no mouth, just a shifting distortion where his features should be. Then the train lights flickered. And he was gone. I should have let it go. I should have told myself it was a trick of exhaustion, a shadow, a tired mind playing tricks. But then the disappearances began. The first missing person was a woman named Claire Dwyer. Her face popped up on my phone a few nights later, a local news alert about a commuter who vanished without a trace. The last confirmed sighting. The same subway line I took home. I recognized her immediately. She had been sitting 2 rows ahead of me the night I saw the man in the gray hoodie. I remembered because she had been staring at her reflection in the train window, except now, thinking back, I wasn't sure if she had been looking at herself, or at something behind her. Something I hadn't seen. I scrolled through the article, my fingers numb. There was no footage of her exiting the station. No witnesses. It was as if she had stepped off the train and simply ceased to exist. 2 days later, another alert. Then another. One by one, people were vanishing, always from the same train line, always at night. And then, on a particularly cold evening, I saw him again. The train was half empty that night, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I kept my head down, staring at my phone. Trying to convince myself that I wasn't counting the passengers. Until I saw the movement in my peripheral vision. I knew before I looked. I felt it. The unnatural stillness. The weight of something watching me. I lifted my eyes, and there he was, standing at the far end of the car. The gray hoodie. The blurred face. But this time, he wasn't alone. A woman stood beside him, swaying slightly, her hands twitching at her sides. Claire Dwyer. Or at least, what was left of her. Her face was the same smeared distortion. A featureless void shifting in and out of focus. And yet, I could feel her looking at me. The train lurched. The lights flickered. And in the stuttering darkness, I felt movement, closer. I bolted. I don't remember how I made it off the train. One moment I was sitting frozen in my seat, the next I was shoving past people, nearly tripping onto the platform. My breath came in ragged gasps as I turned back, expecting to see them standing there. But the train was empty. No gray hoodie. No Claire Dwyer. Nothing. I stumbled home in a daze. Locking my apartment door behind me. But the sense of wrongness clung to me like static. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another news alert. Another missing person. And then, a text message. No name. No number. Just 2 words. You see. I dropped my phone. Because in the dark reflection of the screen, behind my own face, I saw him. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in my apartment felt amplified, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the radiator, the distant sirens outside. But the worst sound was the silence. Because I knew I wasn't alone. I sat on my bed, staring at my phone, that text message burning into my retinas. You see. See what? The missing people. The man in the gray hoodie. Or was it something worse? The screen dimmed as my phone went idle. My reflection stared back at me. My own face, tired and pale. I hesitated, then lifted the phone, angling it slightly, just to check. Nothing behind me. I let out a shaky breath. Maybe I was just paranoid. Maybe the message was some sick prank. Maybe. BZZZT. A second message. I felt my pulse hammer as I tapped it open. You're next. A cold weight settled in my stomach. Then my apartment light flickered. I stopped breathing. The bulb buzzed, dimming for a second, just long enough for me to see the reflection in my bedroom window. A figure standing behind me. I spun around, heart slamming against my ribs. Nothing. I was alone. Or at least, I thought I was. I didn't wait to find out. I grabbed my coat, my keys, and I left. The streets were nearly empty, the city wrapped in a brittle, eerie quiet. I made my way to the subway, my steps quick and unsteady. I needed to see something. I needed to prove to myself that this was just a coincidence. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I reached the station, the overhead lights flickering as I stepped onto the platform. The air felt wrong, too still, too heavy. The train screeched to a stop, the doors sliding open. I stepped inside. The car was almost empty. Just a few scattered passengers. An old man reading a newspaper. A woman tapping on her phone. And then, at the far end, the man in the gray hoodie. He was sitting now, his head tilted slightly. As if he was listening to something I couldn't hear. I gripped the pole beside me, my breath shallow. I could get off at the next stop. Walk home. Never take this train again. But I had to know. I stepped forward. 1 row closer. Then another. And then he turned his head. The distortion on his face pulsed, warping, as if reality itself struggled to hold him in place. My knees locked. And then, he spoke. No voice. No sound. Just 2 words. They formed directly in my head, filling my skull like a radio signal crackling through static. Look behind. Every muscle in my body screamed not to. But I did. And that's when I saw it. The vanishing point. It wasn't a tunnel. It wasn't a door. It wasn't anything I could comprehend. It was a tear in space itself, a void of shifting darkness, stretching from the back of the train, swallowing rows of seats, devouring everything in its path. I saw faces inside. Familiar faces. Claire Dwyer. The other missing commuters. Their mouths open in silent screams, their hands reaching out, their bodies trapped in an endless, falling nothingness. And the worst part? The train was still moving. Still heading toward it. Toward them. The man in the gray hoodie stood up. I turned to run. But the train doors slammed shut. The lights flickered. And everything lurched. The train lurched violently, as if something had grabbed it from behind. I stumbled, gripping the nearest pole to keep from falling. The vanishing point was growing. Rows of seats were disappearing into the darkness. Metal groaned as the train stretched unnaturally, like it was being swallowed. And then, I felt it. A force. A pull. It wasn't wind. It wasn't gravity. It was something worse. Something that clawed at my skin, at my mind, dragging me toward the void. The man in the gray hoodie didn't move. He just stood there, watching. Waiting. I pushed forward, fighting against the impossible pull, grabbing onto the backs of seats, my muscles burning. The other passengers. They weren't reacting. The old man still read his newspaper. His hands turning invisible as the void ate them. The woman on her phone kept tapping the screen, her body half gone, like she didn't even notice she was vanishing. They weren't screaming. They weren't even aware. They had already been claimed. And I was next. I wasn't going to make it. The pull was getting stronger, the force growing heavier, pressing into my chest like a massive, unseen hand. I locked eyes with the man in the gray hoodie. His head tilted slightly, as if considering something. Then, he raised his hand. One single motion. A silent command. And just like that, the pull stopped. The vanishing point still churned behind me, but I could move again. I sucked in a breath, heart hammering. He had let me go. No. Not a favor. A test. And I had passed. The train screeched as it pulled into the next station. The doors slammed open. I didn't hesitate. I ran. Out onto the platform, my breath ragged, my body shaking. The train doors hissed shut behind me. I turned back, expecting to see him still standing there. But he was gone. The train pulled away, disappearing into the tunnel. The vanishing point. The missing passengers, all of it, vanished with it. I stood there for a long time, my mind racing. Had I escaped? Was it over? I checked my phone. One new message. No name. No number. Just 2 words. Not yet. I never took that train again. I changed my commute. I avoided subways altogether. But deep down, I knew it didn't matter. Because some nights, when I walk past the darkened station, I feel it. A pull. A presence. And sometimes, I see a train rolling through the station, one that isn't on any schedule. And standing inside, near the doors, is a man in a gray hoodie. Watching. Waiting. For the next passenger. For the next vanishing. And I know one day, when I least expect it, the doors will open. And I won't be able to stop myself from stepping inside. It happened last night. I was walking home late, my head down, earbuds in, lost in thought. I had done everything right. Avoided the subway. Changed my route. Ignored the feeling of being watched. But the train still found me. I didn't hear it at first. Not until the streetlights flickered and the air shifted, that subtle change in pressure, like a storm was about to break. Then, from somewhere behind me, a distant, screeching roar of metal on tracks. I froze. That sound didn't belong here. There were no train lines above ground, no stations nearby. But as I turned, I saw it. Rolling slowly down the empty street. A subway train. No driver. No markings. No sound except the deep, mechanical grind of its movement. The windows were dark, but I knew it was full. Full of the ones who had vanished. And at the front, standing in the first doorway, the man in the gray hoodie. He raised a hand. Not a wave. Not a threat. An invitation. The train doors hissed open. And that's when I felt it. The pull. It was gentle this time. Not like before. No force dragging me, no violent hunger. This time, it was welcoming. Like it had always been waiting for me. I stepped back. My body screamed at me to run. My mind begged me to resist. But my feet? They were already moving forward. A single step. Then another. The train was waiting. The passengers were waiting. And deep down, I finally understood the truth. I had never escaped. The moment I had seen it. The moment I had noticed the gray-hooded man on that first train. I was already gone. The rules were simple. If you see it, it sees you. And once it sees you, there's no way back. The doors slid shut behind me. The train lurched forward. And I vanished. Forever. Final message. Check your train window the next time you ride. You might see a missing passenger staring back. And if you ever see a man in a gray hoodie, don't look too long. Or you might be next.